Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Miranda Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial to show you how to use my new floral posing box backdrops in Photoshop. I created these to use specifically with to add variation to your already done box shots. They do not have to be sitting on a box specifically, but something similar, or at least in a position to where it's going to be easily composited onto the box and the digital backdrops. I have open one that I haven't done this edit yet at all, so I have one open that I think I want to use. I may switch between them though. So I'm going to come over to my image first, and I'm going to go ahead and select my subject. Do your quick selection tool over here and then select subject up at the top. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer, create a layer mask. And then I'm going to come over and select all, edit, copy, and edit and paste my digital backdrop in there. I'm going to go ahead and resize it real quick. And then I'm going to drag it between these two layers. And then I can move, click on my subject up here, and I can move her around. Now first things first, the light is coming from the opposite way on my subject than on the digital backdrop. So I am going to click on my digital backdrop and I'm going to flip that horizontally. I actually think I probably will use this backdrop because it looks like, I'm going to have to do some tweaking, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty good one to edit. So now I want to make her a little bit bigger because this backdrop, the proportions are a little off. So I'm going to grab her again. And I'm just going to drag, kind of get it to where it matches my other ones. I'm going to zoom in some, pay attention to her leg on the box and her thigh there. And I can manipulate that a little bit if I need to. Zoom out. That looks good for now. We can always go back in and adjust it a little bit more if we need to. Okay, so it seems that she's a little bit brighter than the rest of the backdrop, so I can either bring down the highlights on her, or I can bring down the highlights on, or bring up the highlights on the backdrop. I think I'm going to bring up the highlights on the backdrop. So I'm going to click on my digital, I'm going to add a curves layer. I'm going to click this right here, and it's a clipping mask. It's just going to make it so I'm just working on the digital and not my subject. And I'm just going to bring that up just a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to work on my layer mask, and that is going to add and take away the parts right here. I'm going to add a little bit of her wrap back in to blend it with the box. So I'm going to take my white brush at 100% opacity here, and I'm just going to brush in some of that original image, and that way I'm not going to have to add in shadows because it's just going to be as if the box is now this one. That actually blended pretty seamlessly there. I can go in and maybe even, I'm not sure where the wrap ended up, I could add even more of it in here. I may go back and get rid of this, but I just want to see how this is going to end up looking. Okay, so see, this was the edge of the box initially. I could make that work, but I'm just going to leave it how it was this way, to where there's just a little bit of that wrap sticking out from underneath her leg here. Okay, so now I want to go around the whole outside of my subject and make sure that I don't need to clean up any edges, which it looks like I do. I'm going to use a small white brush here and paint back in some edges that were missed. I don't have to be too careful because she was already on a bright white backdrop, I do say in a lot of my other videos, and I'll say it in this one again, you always want to try to shoot for which digital you're going to be using. It's a lot easier to do that than to try to shoot a photo and then try to find a digital to match it. Find a digital set you really like, and then challenge yourself at your session and try to photograph a photo to go with that digital. That way your portfolio look a lot more seamless, as if you actually photographed it for that, and it won't look to be fake or digital. Okay, just going around the edge and filling in these spaces. This actually looks really good with her leg there, so I'm going to leave that. This foot initially was on a box. If I get rid of this, she had her foot on another box, I believe. Yeah, so I'm gonna manipulate her toes just a little bit to make it seem like her foot is hanging and isn't placed on another box below, because obviously in this image it is not. I want a little bit more of a sharper, see how this is kind of sharp right here? I want it to match that a little bit more. I don't want it to be as blurred right there. If you need to paint back on, you can just press X on your keyboard to switch back and forth between your white and your black brush. Okay, so now I'm going to come over to this part of my, not my layer mask, but my actual image. I'm going to go up to Filter and Liquify. And now see, her foot was on there. I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm just going to straighten out her foot, make her arch a little bit more, and just give it the illusion that, I don't want to elongate her toes though, that her foot is just hanging there rather than being set on a box. And now I just need to, should have done that before I brushed off my mask, because now I have to go back in and fix it. It's good that I show mistakes so you guys can learn from them before you do your edit. You can fast forward this part if you want. Okay, and now another thing I wanted to mention for these backdrops, and I think it's better that I'm posting a lot of my edits on my YouTube channel now before for people to watch before they purchase, because I hate when I show all samples in my listing and then people come back and they say, well, this was this way or this was that way. I do state it in the description if it is, but some people don't always read, so being able to watch a video is kind of just another little thing for me to say, know before you buy. I created these backdrops and added, I think there may be maybe two I didn't, but to most of them I added lens blur already. So because these boxes are pulled off of this backdrop, you do not want your backdrop behind your subject to be in focus. I see so many digitals that don't look realistic for that reason. So just know that these backdrops already do have an added depth of field to them. So you're not going to have to do so much of that, but also I have a lot of people come back that sometimes aren't as, they don't know how to use digital backdrops as much, and they complain that the backdrops are blurry. They're supposed to be that way. The boxes are in focus and it will still work for your image. It's just going to give it that little bit more of a dreamy effect. But if you do want to add more blur to your image, so now let me zoom in. I think I'm pretty happy with everything else. My shadows look fine. This leg looks fine. I like her size proportions to the image. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flatten my image. I do like to add a little bit of a solid color layer over my images when I do digital composites, just to kind of blend the photo a little bit more together. So I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm just going to hold down Alt on my keyboard, and I'm going to click like a softer off-white in this image, and I'm going to go down to my layer adjustments here, and I'm going to create a solid color, and it's going to pop up with that color. And then this is very subtle, but to me it helps blend my subjects with the backdrop just a little bit more. It might be like a thing that I'm just used to doing, and it might not even make that much of a difference, but I think it does. Just adds a little bit more of it blends the images together. Okay, so now if you wanted to add a little bit more blur, there's a couple ways you could do it. You can duplicate your image, go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, zoom in and figure out exactly how much blur you kind of want to add to the backdrop. I'll do about 3, and then create a layer mask and press Control or Command I on your keyboard to invert that layer. And then use your brush, bigger brush, to feather it out 100% opacity, white brush, and just kind of brush in. I don't recommend just brushing off of your subject because it looks wonky when you do that. But you can add a little bit more blur if you want to add a little bit more blur here to the base. So she and the box are more in focus. You can do that. And now that was very subtle added, but it still matters or makes a difference. Or you can, which is the way I do it for a lot of things, you can duplicate that layer, go up to Filter and your Camera Raw. And I've used this a lot lately, and it still says early access, so I don't know if everybody has access to this or not. Hopefully it doesn't go away because I've been using it a lot. Go ahead and press Apply. Sorry, once you get into Camera Raw, go down to Lens Blur, if you have it. I don't know if everybody has. I don't know exactly what the early access feature means. Okay, and now as you can see, it kind of detects the subject for you, and it gives you an initial depth of field blur, but I almost always have to mess around with this. So I usually, I'll drag it a little bit, I'll add some blur to the front, and then bring it back. I want it on those florals some, and now I'm going to bring down the blur amount a lot because I do not want it blurred that much. Like it's doing it on her hair. I don't want it to do it on her hair. You can press blur and you can add extra blur to parts of the image that aren't blurred, or you can press focus. You can change the size of your brush and make her hair in focus right there because I did not want that to be blurred. I don't want her leg to be blurred. Maybe this is why it's still in early access, because it could still use probably a little bit of fine tuning, but you can do that with your brush as well. Okay, and then just go around and look at the image and see where you want to add just a little bit extra blur or not to create that. Pretty much whatever depth of field you want your image to be. I like to have a little bit of blur at the bottom front of my image and behind my subject. Press OK. Let it work, and then again, subtle, but it just blurred it a little bit more if that's something you're wanting. Before and after, I could add maybe a little bit of more. She's a little bit more cool on the cooler side compared to the backdrop, so I could maybe add a little bit of an adjustment layer in there for that. But that's it. I thought these were really pretty box backdrops. I do have a couple of other box digital backdrops in my shop, which I'll probably be discounting soon because they're some older versions. These will probably be regular price, and then I'll probably bump those down a little bit. Eventually maybe get rid of them. I still sell them. Some people still like them, so I'll probably still keep them in the shop and discount them. But if you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. I will link it in the description. Also, if you're wanting to watch more tutorials, make sure to check out my YouTube channel and subscribe. I add new free videos with my tutorials all the time.